reporting on the games you love by people who love to game. The MMO Reporter Network.
You're logging into your favorite game, grinding out some gear. A couple of points added to your stats, and you have a virtual beer. Max level is pretty cool, but I'll remind you here, my friend. These games are not about the goal, it's about the journey and not the end.
You're listening to MMO Reporter, brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download at audibletrial.com/MMO Reporter. And by Doghouse Systems. Choose your weapon with Doghouse Systems.
Don't forget about your ults you need to cherish. Each and every little character you've got, no matter what level they're at. Don't forget about your ults you need to cherish.
Hey everybody, Chris here from MMO Reporter, and I'm talking to Scott Shicoff, who is the lead designer on Neverwinter. Hello, Scott. It's great to talk to you again.
Yeah, how you doing? It's good to talk to you again as well.
I'm taking you up on your offer to come back anytime from the end of our last conversation and talking about the new content, the new module that's going to come out for Neverwinter, the Maze Engine. Now, unlike Underdark, which to me immediately had a huge connotation for the D&D world and what that meant, I actually don't know what the Maze Engine is. So can you give us a little bit of an idea of the scope of this new content?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, actually, you talk about the title. It's something that I really dug when we were trying to figure out what we wanted to name this module, is instantly you feel like you kind of have an idea what it might be, but then again, those words together, what is that? I don't understand. Mm-hmm. So instantly there's kind of this cool intrigue. So the Maze Engine itself is a reality warping artifact, very powerful artifact that it exists in D&D lore. In our campaign, we are saying, so we're continuing with the storylines from the demons from Underdark in Module 8. And in that module, we saw Demogorgon, who, with the madness and the duality and all the craziness that was ensuing, and players work together to drive Demogorgon back. Well, he's not the only demon lord coming through from the abyss. One of the ones is that we're going to be showing you in this module is Baphomet, who Minotaur-like mazes in Minotaur, and he wants to use the Maze Engine artifact to bring his plane of the abyss into the material plane, because that's something that the reality warping powers, things it can do. So that's a big scary thing if he's able to do that in the storyline. So we call this module the Maze Engine because it ties into a new what we're calling internally kind of a solo campaign. So a lot of the campaigns that we have right now, you can do elements of them by yourself, but there are a lot of times you just need to group up. The zones are tough, the monsters are tough, so it's kind of hard to just progress whenever you want to solo in those campaigns. In this new campaign, right from the get-go, and by the way, it's available to players at level 60, you'll be able to get in and make progress on a solo campaign, which is heavily story-based. You'll go through a bunch of story missions. Then you're going to do some repeatable content to kind of work to fill in, because it is still a campaign. So you work towards a campaign, then you get more story content, et cetera, et cetera. But that starts at level 60, and it's all based around the story idea that Baphomet is trying to get this Maze Engine and use it to bring his plane into our existence.
And that's quite a change from the previous campaigns, which have been based on some story and then a lot of repeatable content to get through the different levels of the campaign. Did you find that style wasn't working? Is it just time for something different, or this is just a story that you had to tell?
Well, it's a combination, truthfully. Storyline-wise, we really wanted to continue telling the story of the demons coming through in the Underdark, tying into Out of the Abyss, which was, WotC's last module. And so storyline-wise, we wanted to make sure that we were still leveraging demons, telling stories with them. But mechanically, when we look at why we build campaigns and why people use campaigns or why they exist, They are very helpful for guiding players and helping them know what to do and what rewards they're going to get and how to advance. And so telling the story through a campaign not only helped frame it for people so they had a sense of what they were in store for, but what they could work towards. But it also would just help guide them and help them understand, like, I get it now. So when we did Module 8, and we had that really cool storyline from R.A. Salvatore, which was a really cool series of quests. There wasn't a lot of framework, right? You got quests, then you got quests, and you got quests, but you didn't really know. Am I halfway through it? Am I almost done? Have I just started? You know, it was really hard to understand the framework of the story. So we didn't want to do that again. And so that's one of the reasons we're using the campaign in this format.
And for me, who does tend to be a little bit more of a solo player, that's actually something that's incredibly enticing. I loved the R.A. Salvatore quests in Underdark on Xbox. I just have gone through it. I'm an Xbox player, and that was absolutely fantastic and very, very strong and a great narrative, and really drew me into that storyline. So to be able to have that on a bigger scale is really exciting.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Salvatore stuff and liking the story and the characters. We here at the studio love all that stuff too. And personally, you know, we played through it, and for me, it was like, okay, cool. So when do I get to do more stuff with Drizzt? When do I get to do more stuff with Brunor? And we really, really, for this campaign, for the Maze Engine campaign, we wanted to get more of that IP character, more of those heroes of the world into your experience. So through this campaign, you're going to interact constantly. You're going to be dealing with Drizzt and Brunor and Regis, and we're getting team-ups in there that we haven't ever seen before. Like, you're going to be out on a mission with Drizzt and Minsk and Boo, for example. So there's lots of really fun stuff in there for fans of the IP.
Well, that's fun. So are you talking yet about the details of how that campaign is going to work? Like the actual steps along the way?
Yeah, so as you complete, so again, it's a campaign, so you earn effectively tokens or currency or whatever you want to call it to plug into boxes in a chain, and you're going to do a big chunk of that through story missions, and then you'll be sent out on some quests for some dailies to advance through, you know, the more repeatable stuff, and then you'll get more missions that'll let you advance through the storyline chain.
So will some of the steps in the campaign be like this specific story mission? Others will be daily repeatable stuff, things like that? Okay.
Correct. So if you have a mission, I don't want to give away too much of the story, but I think it's the first mission.
Yeah.
But so, you know, if you are sent down to Gauntlgrim to go help the dwarves drive back some of the demons and close portals so they don't cross over the bridge in a chasm to the gates of Gauntlgrim, that's a story mission. And you'll do that, and you'll complete it, and you'll make progress on your campaign. And then later on, when you're doing the repeatables, the dailies, you'll go out somewhere else in the world based on a random roll, and you'll be asked to complete a task.
Now, you mentioned that the campaign is available at level 60. Will the rewards fit those level 70 players who come in and play through the campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. It's first available at level 60, but we expect players 60 to 70 to all come and play this content.
And there's a couple things I noticed about Underdark. The story missions, the Salvatore quests, they scaled with me as I went through. So I'd go into one, and I leveled as I was going through. I wasn't level 70 yet, and all of a sudden, you know, the next one is the next level going on. It's the level that I am. Are you doing the same thing with this campaign?
You're talking about the enemies that you would fight would be your level.
Yeah.
Well, let me think. The last version of this I played, I want to say yes, that it'll again be an appropriate challenge. Either, and I'm just sort of blanking right now, it'll either be that they'll scale with you, or we will scale the player to be the level of the map. Right. I can't remember at the moment.
So either way, it's going to be a challenge for the player. You're not going to be going through at level 70 fighting 60.
It should be fun for it should be fun for everyone to play.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Now, you also, we mentioned on our last conversation about Underdark, you were bringing out a very strong component of the game with your skirmishes, with encounters, again, being scalable both to player difficulty and also to group size and those sorts of things. How did that work out from your perspective in Underdark? Was that a success, a moderate success, we've got a lot to fix? Like, how did that work out for the data end of things?
Well, so we got a lot of feedback that people enjoyed the variability, that they enjoyed the scaling challenges. For me personally, there's always things I want to fix. I always want to improve. You're never really done making things better.
Yeah.
There was a lot that I liked about it. I think in some ways we probably could have been a little bit smarter about how we built it. Because when you build stuff with a lot of variation, a lot of randomness, certainly if it's something that the team hasn't really done before, there's a lot of learning involved. There's a lot of trial and error. And so I think that there are some things that we probably could have done a little bit better. But by and large, I mean, from what I've seen from the player reaction there and just playing it myself, I feel like it was pretty successful overall.
And are you bringing these sorts of designs, these sorts of encounters into the Maze engine as well?
So our focus was a little different for this module. We were mostly focusing on more of the story stuff, the solo campaign, and then we really wanted to bring back a number of dungeons. And the dungeons don't really currently in Neverwinter, the dungeons don't have that same kind of randomness and variability that we were putting into the skirmishes for M8.
Right.
So we aren't really doing that in this module, where our focus has shifted.
Okay. Now you mentioned dungeons, and you're bringing back. I know as I leveled, and I actually I went through a few weeks before Underdark, and I went from mid-30s to 60-something in just like a week and a half, just flying through all that content. And I kept on getting these quests for dungeons that had been removed. These are the ones that you're retooling now. A lot of them are coming back into the game, but there is a vocal part of the community. I can't quite tell the size of that vocal part of the community, but they are very vocal, that aren't quite happy with the amount of content that's going to be there for epic level content for end game players. And that's been something that's been a little bit of a sore point with the community. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we had a number of dungeons that were removed back when we did Module 6, Elemental Evil. And since then, one of the number one things we heard from players was that they wanted dungeons back, which was important to us. We wanted to bring them back. We always had an expectation that they would be coming back. For this first iteration, what we were able to put together was 4 of the regular dungeons, which we internally sort of call leveling dungeons, but they're really just they're called dungeons when you're looking through the queue system, and 1 epic dungeon. Based on the time that we had to be able to get something out, we needed to focus on building the regular dungeons. The other thing we noticed was, you mentioned you went through the levels and you were offered these things. When we looked at what dungeons were available across the board from, well, basically level 12 to level 60, there were a lot of obvious gaps, which is also sort of why we chose Cloak Tower, Pirate King, Frozen Heart, and Carandax. Those were places that were missing. And the thing to keep in mind is they are available at certain levels, but everyone up to level 70 can play them and get rewards. And in fact, there are we assume that players will play them all the way through. When we're going through and redoing the dungeons, it's a very different scale and scope to build an epic dungeon than it is to build a regular dungeon. Some of the reasons that we took away dungeons to begin with was they were all over the map as far as quality, time commitment, rewards, etc. And for the most part, there were 1 or 2 dungeons that people would play because they can get through them the quickest, or they had exploits, or whatever. And we didn't really think that was actually good for the game, for Neverwinter. So when we went back through and we picked the dungeons that I mentioned, Cloak Tower, Pirate King, Frozen Heart, and Carandax, we gave them a visual upgrade to kind of to bring them up, but we also went through and brought them in line with the other dungeons of their ilk that were available. So these dungeons are all now 3-player. The rewards all make sense. They're you can play the one you want. The time commitments are much closer aligned than they were before. Like, for example, Carandax, it's a really cool dungeon. It could take you an hour or more to play it before, and for just a leveling dungeon, that's crazy. That's way too long. That was a commitment of like an epic dungeon, but without those rewards. So we did a lot of work on these to really try and bring them in line. And then when we said, okay, we definitely want to make sure we get an epic dungeon out there, which one should we bring back? we chose Castle Never because that was one of our favorites. That was one of the community's favorites.
Right.
And but even then, if you went back and you looked at, we pulled data for how long people would take to run through Castle Never, and it was hitting like an hour and a half more often than not, which again, for some of the feedback we got was that was a really long time commitment for someone to get in, and it wasn't easy content. So if you were there for an hour, you might not even be progressing. You might be beating your head against a wall somewhere. So we really put a lot of effort into cleaning up Castle Never to bring it more in line with the other epic dungeons that we have available, to make sure we updated the rewards. Not only do we update it visually, we updated the dungeon thematically. So we wanted to tie it into demons as well. And in fact, you'll be facing Orcus, the demon prince of undeath, at the end of Castle Never. And so what we did was just, well, this was really cool, but imagine all these adventurers going through Castle Never before, dealing with all the enemies that were there in the past. They died. There was a lot of death in that place. So of course Orcus would show up, and so you're going to be fighting undead adventurers, people that had died in there before, not along with demons, along with things like an undead beholder, because there was a beholder there and you had killed it, etc.
That's pretty cool to tie it in, and that's going to be a great piece of nostalgia for players who have gone through there before.
Right. So we have new bosses, we have new mechanics, we have new encounters. It got a full update.
Mm-hmm.
And it no longer takes an hour and a half to go through.
Right. Now, would you say that this is something that's an ongoing process where, with upcoming modules, it's planned at least to continue to revamp and bring
absolutely.
back more? Yeah.
We know. Look, it's of course Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's part of the IP. Right. People want more dungeons. We want to bring more dungeons. It just takes time.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that things that we release make sense and that players feel like it's a choice, not, oh, well, I guess this is the only dungeon I'm supposed to play.
Right. And it's got to be content that works and that's not bugged, and that all takes time, right?
Yep.
So the one thing that I want to ask, and I've asked this for the last few module expansions, the leveling path from 60 to 70, not necessarily the path, but the experience more than anything else, is a big shift from the game experience before that. And I've seen this recently with Underdark. That's around when I hit 60 and was trying to push through. It was really like slamming on the brakes the minute that I hit level 60, and that to be perfectly blunt, my excitement for the game has lessened a little bit going into this 60 to 70, and it feels very much like a grind, and that's not what the game felt like before. And that tonal shift in the experience was a little off-putting for me. Are you looking at re-exploring this? Because it has been a consistent issue over the past few modules.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ever since we launched Elemental Evil, we've been making improvements. You know, we've dramatically shortened the time that it takes to get from 60 to 70 from where it was when we first introduced the expansion. We've added some more content with the Salvatore quest. We have the new level 60 campaign that'll help alleviate some of that. And then moving forward, we are reevaluating all of the Elemental Evil zones. Actually, currently, as we speak, we're reevaluating all of those zones to make improvements, to make it less painful for people to go from 60 to 70.
Now, I think the real question that everyone is wondering is, are you still playing your Oathbound Paladin?
Yeah, I am, but I'm a little sad because it's one of our focuses for class balance, and
leave it.
So actually, I do want to mention one of the things, we are actually also still in the heavily evaluating all the classes for class balance. But yes, I still play the Paladin.
Now, I meant to ask this. I forgot. You brought out some new races and classes with Elemental Evil, but you haven't brought out anything since. Is it just you're working on stuff and it's not ready for release, or you're really, really happy with how things are sitting now and adding another class sort of upsets that balance that you've got going? Where are you sitting with that? So
there's a couple things I can talk about here. So before we introduce a new class, I think most people would agree that we need to do some work on class balance. If people feel that we have issues with the Paladin or the Warlock or the Ranger or the Cleric or the Rogue or whatever whichever class feels like it needs work. Until we bring these more in line and we get ourselves into a better balanced state, I don't think it makes sense to introduce a new class. And I don't know how well that would be received, to be honest. If there's a perception that we need to work on class balance and we're just releasing new classes, I don't think that would go over so well. And internally, we don't think it makes a lot of sense. So, like I said, we are in the process of heavily examining the classes, figuring out, some things might just be bugs. Some things might just be targeted fixes, things we can do. But for some of the classes, there are some systemic issues that we need to really evaluate and make sure that we're making smart choices. Again, so that every class feels fun, every class feels viable and competitive. And until we're there, like I said, I don't know that it makes sense to introduce a new class. As far as races go, we are looking at doing new races. We're not doing a new one for this module. Of course we have, so back up a sec. Right now, it can be a little rough if you want to run an alt in Neverwinter. There are things that we can do better to make it less painful to have an alt. And we're making steps there. We've already started to talk about that and evaluate where we can sort of alleviate that pain point. But if it feels painful to roll a second or third character, introducing a new race, again, might not make a lot of sense. We do have race rerolls, but like for me personally, I'm not going to turn my Dragonborn Paladin into a dwarf or a different race. He's a Dragonborn Paladin. That's the character.
Right.
So I think we need to do a little bit of work to make some of the alting experience better before we introduce a new race. But that doesn't mean we're going to necessarily wait for the sake of waiting. We do have races we want to add, and I think I can't say for sure, but there's probably a better chance of seeing a new race before a new class.
Okay. Now, I do want to mention a couple of quick things here as we're nearing the end. I know that you released some information recently. You made a post. I'll put that in the show notes and in the comments, the description below the video about the trade bar store changes. I know that we recorded a podcast. I'll put a link to that as well in the show here. But I know I've discussed my bit, and that there's been an announcement from Cryptic about the changes to the trade bar store. But a lot of the things seems to have come around from communicating with your community. That's got to be something that's a little bit tough to communicate with your community when they've got those concerns.
Yeah, for sure. As far as details on the trade bar stuff, I don't really have much more info to give right now than what's been provided. So I would direct you towards the statements that have been released. As far as communication, though, yeah, we can definitely do better. We have a lot of things, and no excuses, but we have a lot of things going on, and things slip, and we make mistakes as far as communication goes. We fail to get information out necessarily when we should. Sometimes we fail to have a communication before we do a thing that might alter what we actually end up doing. And we're all aware of it. And it's something that we're working on, and we're working with our community department as well, just to take steps in a better direction. For me, it's super important that we get information to the community. I never want to, I'm not looking to mislead or lie or anything else. I'm a gamer. I play so many different games. It's crazy. I know what it feels like when a company, you think that they're going to do one thing and they do another, or they do something without telling you. And yeah, that happens. That's a reality. The game industry is a crazy place, and things move in wild ways. But I know that feeling, and it's never my goal, and it's never Cryptic's goal to perpetuate that kind of thing. So we're taking steps, we are evaluating our process, and we're figuring out what we can do to be better about that.
Right, and it's got to be tough also from the company side of things. The sheer Schadenfreude that many communities, pretty much every online community, seems to get anytime there's any sort of error that kind of bandwagons onto things. It's got to be tough, because this is something that you love. This is a community that you love, I'm sure. I know we love our community here with our podcast, so I can imagine what it feels like when you've got such a substantial community like Neverwinter does. It's got to be tough. on your end of things.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You never want to let your fans down, right? We come into work to do what we do because we love it and we love the game and we want to create something that people will enjoy. You know, I've been in the industry for a very long time at this point. The reason I have stayed in, well, other than the fact that I don't even know what else I would do at this point, but the biggest reason I've stayed in is because I love making things, getting them out to people, and having them enjoy it, right? That's my goal.
Yeah.
So that's what we try to do. And honestly, so many problems and so many issues can be solved with better communication. We just need to get better.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate what I said on my podcast about my thoughts on your intentions. And I've been lucky enough to chat with you guys. We've had drinks together at conventions and we've discussed stuff. And I really feel that that there's none of this what some of the community has said. Evil intent, for lack of a better term. I really think you guys are coming at it from a good point. Yep, you made some mistakes, and it's okay to admit that. And I enjoy this game. I want to move forward and keep having fun, especially with Maze Engine, because I do like the idea of continuing on the Demon storyline. I've been neck deep in it, going to Acquisitions Inc. at PAX, playing through the Sword Coast Legends campaigns and Neverwinter as well. This is a great push of content from the D&D megaverse, and I'm just soaking it up. Yeah. And I can't wait for the Maze Engine.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you guys play it. I think there's some really cool stuff that you're going to enjoy.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Scott. As always, an absolute pleasure chatting with you about this.
Yeah, man. And as I said last time, anytime you want to talk, I'm glad to do it.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
Don't forget about your ults you need to cherish. Each and every little character you've got, no matter what level they're at. Don't forget about your ults you need to cherish. Each and every little character you've got, no matter what level they're at.
Thanks for watching the video, everybody. Don't forget to check out all the other podcasts at MMOReporter.com or by clicking on any of the links here. And please check out our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MMOReporter. Thanks, everyone, and see you in game.